So my first brand sponsor has been amazing because we actually used to work together in oil and gas, and we both got laid off around different times. And she started a business, a chocolate business, where she is importing cacao from Venezuela. She's originally from Venezuela, and her husband's from Mississippi. So they're making these bean to bar chocolate bars, and they're selling them here locally at the farmers market.
Yeah. I lay on the scale, you gotta glow, you gotta glow. She had my attention, she gotta know.
I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of the Let's Gather podcast. I'm your host Zeke, and in this episode I have Genesis Amaris Kemp, the host and founder of Gems with Genesis Amaris Kemp podcast, to speak about podcasting. You can find more information about her podcast by clicking the link in the description below and find the episode that I was featured on. I do have a content warning for any strong language used in this episode, and hope you have a nice day and enjoy the show. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Zeke.
No problem, anytime.
So, everyone, my name is Genesis Amaris Kemp. I am the podcast founder and host of Gems Podcast, where my core pillars are to educate, inspire, and motivate, all while bridging the gap and connecting the dots between D, E, I, and B, which stands for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I started my podcast back in November of 2020. And it started off doing solo episodes as a way for me to cope with the loss of my father. And then after that, it turned into me doing interviews with other people. So now it is a combination of solo and interview style segments.
Nice. Now, before we get into the episode, what would your origin story be and how'd you like to represent it? So, what your origin story would be, and would you make a book or movie out of it, anything in that nature?
So I definitely have a book. And my story is very real. The title of my book is Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace. And that book came out in 2020, the first edition. And then I went back and added a new chapter in 2021 to really highlight what happened in 2020, personally as well as professionally, and how I got to where I am now is really by taking ownership of my career and facing systemic racism in a corporate setting. Because my background is actually oil and gas. So I spent 12 years in oil and gas as a whole and 15 years total in corporate America.
Nice. Definitely, everybody go check out the book. And okay, so you said earlier about why you started podcasting. So, what made podcasting the creative outlet for you?
So with podcasting, it is part of who I am. It's my brand, and there's no censorship around that. Where you are working for other people, there are certain things that you can and cannot do or say. But whenever you have your own podcast, you can have those open conversations. You can have those difficult conversations, as well as sometimes those even courageous conversations where you interview different people who may be on the same wavelength as you. They may come from different walks of life or different backgrounds, and you can have a fluid conversation without anyone telling you, oh, you can't ask that, or you can't say that, or you can't do that. And I really wanted to create a space where we can be ourselves, where we could be authentic, we could walk into the light and really create a space to educate. We're educating outwardly. We're also inspiring people who may feel like their voice has been silenced, or we're motivating people to take the next step so they could continue to walk out their journey. And you do that by intersecting and really creating synergies and collaborating with other people within the podcasting space.
Nice. The freedom. So, with that freedom, how do you manage it? Do you let people did you put your own limiters on your freedom, or you just let everything be expressive?
So with my podcast, I do a bit of screening. So I have a podcast guest form that I require everyone to fill out, because it is a way to, one, let me see, did they follow all the instructions? They fill out everything that I asked for on the podcast form. Then by them filling out the form, then I can see, okay, where do they hang out on social media? I could kind of do my due diligence to see, okay, did what they put on the form, is it representative by what they're doing on social media? Because anyone could put something on a form because they want to be branded by association. And then what I do, sometimes I pitch for guests or guests find me out. So there's a mixture there. But I also want to make sure that whatever guest comes on, they have a similar background, or like when it comes to the core values, that they want to educate, they want to inspire, and they want to motivate. They're not just there just to sell their brand, their products or services, because if so, then it's going to turn into a paid promotion, because I'm not here to make you more money. We're really here to complement one another and put out content so other people could get to the levels that we're at.
Got it. And then with that, with all of the screening and stuff, you're definitely more organized than I am. I'm pretty much just go with hope and prayer. So, like, I know this person. We should be all right.
Yeah, at first it wasn't always that way, to be honest. I didn't have a form, but then I found out like I definitely needed structure, especially as the podcast was growing, because then I was going to various places to pick and choose what content to add in to really compile my show notes. And it wasn't a good use of my time, to be honest, because I don't have a VA. So I said, okay, having a form is going to be my way of centralizing all of my information. And so once I'm done recording with somebody, I like to air my show the same day. So I use the information that's within my podcast guest form to help me compile the show notes. And then I know I'm not typing anything incorrectly, because you have given me all the information, your relevant links. I know what your call to action is. I have your bio and so forth.
Got it. Definitely. Structure is definitely needed, and order. And so with podcasts, you do both a mixture of single and with another person. What is kind of like the difference in like the feelings of recording both styles?
So my podcast is normally 30 minutes or less. Sometimes it does run over, but that's very seldom, because I want it to be where you could work out for 30 minutes and listen to the podcast. You could cook a meal for 30 minutes or less, like Rachel Ray. And then whenever I do solo episodes, I do like 10 minutes or less, depending on what is my passion topic that day, because I always like to lead with my heart whenever I do those solo episodes.
Got it. Yeah, definitely. Shorter episodes are very nice, because when you try to transcript it and you have an hour or more long episode, you kind of just like get discouraged. Like, no, what, this ain't it. I'm just gonna have to come back to this later.
Yeah, I definitely like to make it easier for myself. So I always say, working smarter, not harder, and doing what is attainable for me, especially with my lifestyle.
Got it. And with like meeting all the different people, how has that changed you over the years?
Wait, can you say that again? Sorry, it was hard to hear you.
When meeting the different people as guests from the podcast, how has that changed you?
Oh, it's been super beneficial, because I'm definitely an extrovert, and just connecting with people all across the world, because I've interviewed people in New Zealand and Australia. That's been really cool, especially in light of the pandemic, because I tell people I've been able to travel the world, metaphorically speaking, by Zooming. And I think it's really cool, because they bring on different perspectives that you wouldn't have thought about. And that's the beauty of whether you're traveling face to face or if you are remotely traveling, you really get to connect with other people who have various skill sets and expertise. And you get to really put yourself in their seat for a bit. And the cool thing about me interviewing them is I'm learning just as much as my listeners and viewers are learning, because I never do any scripted information. The only thing that will be scripted is their bio, because I can't make up somebody's bio, but everything else is very organic, coffee chat style. So I get to ask questions, I get to learn, we have laughs and all of that good stuff. And I think a lot of people resonate with that.
Definitely. Unscripted is definitely easier. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's just see where this goes. But sometimes people need that script like, what am I thinking?
Exactly, because you were actually a guest on my show. So if you want to share your experience and how you felt with my interview style, I think that will be good because it ties into me talking about it from the founder and host perspective.
I was definitely like a familiar feeling of just like speaking with somebody and then keeping on your toes. Like you was ready with a question. After I answered, you're like, okay, cool. Here's the next question. I was like, okay. And then one time he asked me what celebrity I want to have a guest. I was like, I didn't actually think about that one for a second. And it was like, who's famous again?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, because I definitely wanted it to be conversational flow, but not like you were drinking from a water hose or anything where it's like, whoosh.
Yeah, and the shorter format keeps it compact and doesn't have like a lot of dead space.
Yeah.
And then with podcasting, would you suggest other people start podcasting?
I would if they're passionate about it, because if you're just doing something to jump on the bandwagon, you may not necessarily reach your ideal audience, or some people say your avatar, and you may get burnt out because it's not something that you like to do, but it's something that you're trying to do to stay relevant. When in actuality, there's a whole bunch of other things that you could do to really maximize your time and effectiveness.
Definitely. This is a grind that seems endless.
Yeah, and when you first start off, people don't get paid for podcasting. So a lot of people do it because they love it and they want to bridge the gap and they want to actually leave an imprint to drive that impact. So if you're trying to do it for money, just know that you're not going to always get paid unless you start charging people to be on your show. But if I'm the person on the other end and I'm like, why would I pay to be on this podcast that just started? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I'm the type of person where I'm like, make it make sense. Or if you want to get brand sponsors or brand ambassadors, then they want to see, okay, what's their return on investment? How long have you been podcasting? What's your numbers? How many downloads? And there's all types of metrics that they like to look at whenever they decide whether they're going to fund you or not. And I feel like as a podcaster, I have one brand sponsor and I'm working on getting some other ones. But you know what? It takes work to get to that level. And I'm not telling you that it's easy, but you know, things that come easy in life, you lose them quickly. But things that come slow and steady, you hold on to them because you realize how much work that you put in it, and your work is going to speak for itself.
Yeah, this might be coming very slowly. It better last a long time. But yeah, definitely, because I started my podcast to get a job, let's say, before in different episodes. That's pretty much what happened. So now I'm trying to find out what's next. Is I'm going to continue it or I'm going to just stop because I achieved my goal. So that's where I'm at right now with the podcast.
Oh, congratulations on achieving your goal. So your main mission was doing a podcast to get a job.
Yeah. And then I did it. I was like, oh, now what? And then sometimes it's like, okay, cool, the year's over, but we have to prepare for the next one. So it's just like, there's no stop. It just like keeps going. And then go ahead.
No, but I was going to ask you, but do you enjoy it? Because if you enjoy it, you should keep on going. If you've accomplished your mission and you feel burnt out and it becomes like another thing on your to-do list, then maybe you should stop it.
I don't know, because I feel like I do feel burnt out a lot, but then it like a lot of it works. Like things will work. Like I'll be like, how do I find a guest? And then I found like the guest. I'm just like, oh, so the universe is kind of telling me like, this is working. I'm just like, maybe this is one of the times where you start something and then you get to the low and then you have to just work past the low to get to the next high.
Yep, the pendulum swing is what I call it.
And it's like the universe will tell you what works. Sometimes you could try something and it may just not be for you, but you try something else and then it's just like, oh, okay, now it worked. Now I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, because before I used to do graphic design, then I switched to podcasting. I was like, this seems easier transition for me.
So when you say draft design, do you mean like AutoCAD and stuff like that?
I mean, graphic design. So like this.
Oh, graphic design.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought.
That's okay. And then I mean, since it's a podcasting, so I might do a transition to live streaming. But I'm definitely by the time this episode comes out, at least tested the waters.
Super cool.
Definitely. And we saw that around the same time. I started earlier 2020, so November 2020. So I guess 2020 was like a year for everybody to like, we were stuck at home, let's try something.
Yep. I tell people like, what else were you doing? Because you were confined to your house. You couldn't really go anywhere. You could go outside in your backyard, but that gets bored. So I felt like a lot of people did emerge to podcasting in 2020. And then now that the world has opened back up, some of those podcasters have hit what they call pod fade, where they faded out of the equation.
Definitely. And so with working with brands, how is that going? Like you mentioned earlier, you have like a brand sponsorship. So how is it getting there and then now going to the next one?
So my first brand sponsor has been amazing because we actually used to work together in oil and gas, and we both got laid off around different times. And she started a chocolate business, where she is importing cacao from Venezuela. She's originally from Venezuela and her husband's from Mississippi. So they're making these bean to bar chocolate bars, and they're selling them here locally at the farmers market. Now they're actually outsourcing it to other businesses, where businesses are using their chocolates to make other products that they sell. And then now she's actually going to open a brick and mortar in Venezuela, and then soon she'll come back and open a brick and mortar here in Texas. So just having someone who believes in my brand, just from seeing me from a work perspective to now podcasting and etc., and them to say, hey, we want you to make our commercial because we like your voice. So they wrote the script out for me. I read the script. I did 6 different takes because I wanted to get it right and perfect, because it is someone else's brand. And then that was how it jump started. And then the second brand sponsor that I'm working on is a local bookstore here that is featuring my book in their bookstore, and they support a lot of Black authors and minority authors. And I think that will be cool to do business as a 360 effect. So we are in the conversation phases, but I'm pretty sure that they are going to become the next brand sponsor.
Nice. Yeah. A lot of times people try to find like the bigger brands, but then they forget about the people around them. That could be like that's either a stepping stone or be a lifetime partner.
Yeah, I would love a big brand, but the problem with big brands, sometimes when you are branded by association, they want you to tweak and change certain things to make sure that it is a good representation of their brand, since they are paying you. And I like my core values and what my mission is. So I don't want to change my mission to appeal to your brand, but I do want to be able to meet you halfway and us to create those synergies. So whenever it comes to the big brands, you really have to be mindful of that, because not all money is good money, and you don't want to lose yourself while taking some dollars here and there.
Definitely. You gotta keep yourself. Just reminding yourself about yourself.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. Yeah, because that's how I got my music for my podcast intro, was because I was working, and then the other person, they was the president, the lead, like the charge of a music label, and then they was like, we charge it for free, and I was like, that makes sense. We know each other. And then not really much negotiation. We just signed the paperwork, so we know that it's on paper and everything like that.
And that's pretty cool, because it's like you scratch my back, I scratch your back, and we're both helping one another.
Yeah. So a lot of my podcasts is pretty much just what skills do I have now and what can I like use what I got. That's pretty much how I am moving along.
Super cool.
Yes. And how many times? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, like, how many times people come to you and ask you how to start a podcast? Like, giving them tips and everything?
It was in the beginning, it was often. And then I realized that, starting a podcast took me a while. And since I am also a visionary coach, like I can't give away all my information for free because I still have to eat and support myself and my family. So then I switched to a paid model. And I think that drove away some traffics because people are always trying to get something for free. But then whenever you put a price tag on it, it's like, oh no. So one of my people in my circle, she reminded me of a quote. She's like, don't pick my brain, pick a price package. And I thought that
not gonna finish.
I thought that was pretty funny, but true, because it's like, hey, like it's your years of experience, it's your credibility, it's your service, it's your brand, and you put so much into it. You want to, get a return on your investment because time is equivalent to money, and spending 30 minutes to an hour with somebody and all they say is thanks, or they don't offer to buy you coffee or whatnot, then it's like, oh, wow. Like, so they just got all this information and they're reaping the benefit. And yes, it's cool. You like to see other people win, but at least whenever you make it, give that person a shout out because they did help you. Don't just forget about that person who turned you on.
Definitely. For me, I made a PDF. It was like pretty much of like the basics, and I was like, this should be able to stop any conversations. It's like pretty much just all the things I had at the time. Like, here you go. And then I was definitely going to do like a pay model, like actual consulting of like me actually working through them, working with them with their ideas. That's definitely in the works. Just gotta figure some other stuff out.
Nice. So whenever they came to you, like you just gave them the PDF document, that was it?
It was gradual, like me first, like speaking with my friends. My friends like, how do you do this? I'm like, okay, cool. And then I just spoke with them, and then over time was like, let me just compile all of the knowledge into one thing, and then I started giving out the PDF. Like, okay, here, oh, you want to do it? Then here, and it's like the PDF is like an entry into like the PDF will become an entry into the like consulting side of it.
Okay, kind of like a click funnel in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely have to be strategic nowadays.
It's competition.
Yep.
So yeah, there's definitely a gap in our experiences because you have like decades into like oil and gas and all that stuff, and I'm just like, I just got out of school like 3 years ago, and I'm still trying to figure out my next and first step.
I tell people, if you know what you're passionate about, start with that. And some advice I got from my older brother, he's like, if you're doing it for the money, you're going to be burnt out. But if you're doing it because you actually enjoy what you're doing it, then you're going to thrive and you're no longer going to be in that survival mode. And I actually fell into oil and gas. I started when I was in high school via a co-op. And then from there, I just started to build up my career. But I always had that kind of Les Brown mentality. I wanted to be hungry because I started over not just once, but twice in my career when it came to oil and gas. My first job was an imaging clerk. All I did was scan papers all day long. It was so boring. There was even a day where I fell asleep at my desk, and I remember my boss like tapping me on my shoulder, waking me up. I felt so embarrassed, and I was actually kind of mortified. And then from there, I was like, man, I got to do something else. So then I quickly started to network within the company and figure out what other departments were doing and where can I learn. And that is how I quickly started to build my career. So I went to project management. Then from project management, I did HSC, which is health, safety, and environmental. And then that led me to having my first manager role whenever my old supervisor left to go to a Fortune 500 company. It was just the both of us that built the entire safety program from the ground up for this small mom and pop company. So they gave me the position as an interim HSC manager. And then once I got up there, it was like hitting that glass ceiling. You're capped out with your salary and there's really nowhere else to go. So that's what led me to switching gears to go to a Fortune 500 company. And when I was applying, I had 3 job offers, and the one that I ended up choosing was the lowest paying position. But the reason why I took it was because that company had longevity and I would be branded by association, because just having it on my resume, everyone knows that company. They're like, "Ooh, I want to work there," or whatnot. So I had to humble myself and I started over again with my career as an administrative assistant. Then I went on to be a raw material coordinator for a commodity, which is polypropylene, so a form of plastic. So I was in charge of ordering all the raw materials that went into making polypropylene. Then after that role, I really wanted to do something else because I had just got engaged during that time to my husband now, and we've been married since 2018, but dated 3 years prior to getting married. And then I was like, I cannot keep doing this long commute and etc. Because it was pretty much like my husband planned our entire wedding, except my hair and makeup and dress, because I never could make it to the vendors because I was commuting like 2 hours one way to work and maybe 2 hours coming back home. So the company created a brand new role, and that's where I switched gears into trade regulations and compliance coordination for another commodity such as polyethylene, which is a form of plastics.
That was a lot. It was a lot of big words, but I understood everything.
Yeah.
It's pretty much I can see like how that experience is now translated into the podcast, where it's like, okay, now I start again, but then now you take some of the same lessons and stuff, and then you transition it into the podcast.
Absolutely, because now I get connect with people who are, whether they're in corporate America or whether they're in the entrepreneurship journey or et cetera, because now I have experienced both sides. Even though we may not necessarily be in the same industry, corporate is still corporate. There's just different rules and policies depending on what industry you're in, but there's still SOPs, standard operating procedures. There's still rules and regulations you have to follow. There's still, the office politics, the nepotism, and etc.
Having flashbacks to college, I'm just like, I remember learning all this stuff. Anybody's picking their careers. Yeah. Doing media got me into media, so I'm going to stay there for now and see how that goes.
Interesting. And then you're really passionate about it. So you're actually working in your degree field. And sometimes that doesn't always happen for everyone. They may get a degree, like, for example, let's use psychology, because I started off being a psychology major for 2 years until I realized that you're not going to make any money in psychology unless you get a master's or a PhD. And a lot of people that graduate, they can't find jobs. So they end up doing these low paying positions, and then you realize, wait, man, I have all these loans because maybe your parents couldn't afford to pay the whole way. So now you have like different types of loans, whether they're subsidized or unsubsidized loans, and now you're trying to work maybe 1 job, 2 jobs, some even work 3 jobs to pay off those student loans. And it's like, is this what I signed up for?
Yeah, definitely. I was definitely trying to avoid that because I switched my major twice. Said other episodes how so it was accounting, then I was like, that's not gonna work for my personality. Then I tried tech, and then I was like, I'm terrible at coding, got 0 in the midterm, and then I was like, I'm already doing graphic design and like minor in it, so might as well just do marketing and have like multiple skills. And then I just stayed the course and then kept applying, went through the pandemic, and then got the job.
And that's cool because you could always fall back and do graphic designing on the side as a side gig, especially being a podcaster. People could see your work by you designing different flyers and stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what else? So podcasting. Do you have like a long-term plan with podcasting, or is it just like go with the flow?
Right now, I just go with the flow because I'm actually enjoying it. So I don't want to put like a long-term commitment. But if I had to give one, it would definitely be to have at least 5 brand ambassadors and sponsorships before the end of second quarter this year.
Got it. Second quarter. We just about ending first. Got it.
Yeah. So You had to think about that, huh?
I was like, that's like 3 months.
Yeah. So a lot of asking and pitching.
Like, trust me, I got this. It's going places.
Yep. Just keep holding on and remaining true to my core values. And I believe the right people at the right time will gravitate, but not just sitting down and waiting for them to come to me. I'm also going to some of the brands that I'm interested in working with and pitching to them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I just thought and then stop thinking. But yeah. Podcasting. Brands. I just lost everything. Uh-huh. Okay. Reset. Cool. So you want to, that's your goal. And yeah. Definitely a life pretty much you have to try and do compared to this. You have to wait for it to happen, but you have to like actively do it so it can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's almost like this statement or sentiment that some people use, whether they're religious or spiritual. They say faith without works is dead. So if you never take actions and you never plant those seeds, you're not going to be able to reap because you didn't take time to sow.
Definitely. Like, if you don't put the time in, then when things happen, you're not ready. You don't have the reps. And with your podcast, you're doing like multiple, so you definitely have the talking reps and like you understand how things work. With that.
Yeah. And there's some days where I do daily segments where I have maybe 5 guests in one day. There's some weeks where I may only have 1 guest. So it fluctuates.
Definitely. I was like, seasons I can control. Everything can be organized and like a plan. So, yes. Anything else? Anything else I haven't asked yet that you want to talk about?
Not that I can think of. I think you asked me quite a bit of questions. We talked about the professional side, me coming from corporate America. We talked about the podcasting. I gave a little shameless plug for my book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace. Is there anything else that you want to know what I have going on?
The podcast is like, no, you podcast, not you podcast. Podcast. So I say is with like podcasting and everything. If you was to make like the next step in like podcasting, go to like a different level, would you change anything or to like accommodate? Because I'm always thinking about like how like if I get bigger, I might have to move differently and be extra cautious of what I say and how I act.
So because I don't want to say if, I want to say when I get bigger, I will definitely outsource some things like the podcast, show notes, have somebody do the show notes, the marketing, and etc. That way I can really focus on the content creation, which is interviewing guests on my show, because, sometimes it does take a lot of time to put certain things together. And then especially marketing is not my strong suit. I'm doing it now out of necessity because I do want to market when someone comes on to my show, just like I expect my guests to share content and market it outwards with their network. So that way we're spreading the reach both ways and we're tapping into various sectors. So that's one thing that I would definitely consider and definitely do.
Got it. Definitely. I'm definitely like, I need an editor. And then even though I know graphic design, another graphic designer. They can design things.
Yes.
It's like they're better at it than I am. So I think we can stop there. Okay. I'll have one last question. You already named all the story because you have your book, so then we can stop there.
Yeah, and I definitely want to encourage for the listeners out there who do want to connect with me, you can go to genesisamarisKemp.net. That is my website, and you'll find all information there on what I'm working on. I'm actually giving away a free chapter of my book for Chocolate Drop in Corporate America. It's hidden there. I don't know if you can see that.
It's popping in and out.
Yeah, it's fading in and out. I'm using a virtual background today. So that's the cover of my book. So the first chapter of my book is free. And then I'm also offering 2 health and wellness products. So one is a free health assessment, and the second one is a sunrise superfood packet where it's all your vitamins in one pack. It's definitely going to give you that energy in a clean and effective way versus you taking a 5-hour energy where it builds you up and then you crash. And that junk is just not good for your system over time. And it has been linked to giving people signs of strokes and heart attacks. So just really be mindful of what you're putting into your body. And the reason why I do health and wellness too, as my other business, is because how are you really going to enjoy your wealth if you don't have optimal health? So definitely check out that information on my website. You could toggle between the different tabs. If you resonate with what I said today, I can be found on Instagram at Genesis Amaris Kemp. My name's down at the bottom, and Zeke will put this info in the show notes. And same thing on Facebook, it's Genesis Amaris Kemp, and then on Twitter, it's Genesis A Kemp. And then check out the book, Chocolate Drop in Corporate America, From the Pit to the Palace.
Yes, definitely.
That brings another episode of the Let's Get Up podcast to a close. Again, you can find more information about Jones with Genesis Amaris Kemp by clicking the link in the description below. For next week, I'm my friend Yusuf on the podcast. Hope you did this day, and I hope to see you there.